Aliens. There are two types of people in the world. Those who prefer aliens to Alien and those who are wrong. This is a sci-fi horror action movie that's a war movie, and it still was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, which to this day is not particularly common, but at the time was wild that a movie like this would be celebrated at that level. And while I think that Alien is a perfect movie, I think that this just builds on top of it, adding a few more layers to everything, and then just being more a film that is in line with my preferences and the way I like movies to kind of function and work. But kind of at its core, I think that James Cameron takes this great foundation and just builds on top of it. Because he's building on a perfect foundation that there's a lot to work with, he's just able to add more depth to everything. So Ripley in the first movie is kind of defined by her personality, but we don't get to know that much about her. She gets to be a more prominent character in the second film. In particular, in the director's cut, we learn about the fact that she had a daughter that she lost. Her motivation is more than, let me survive and battle this evil android. There's kind of more driving what she's doing. There's fear of returning to what happened before, but the only thing that would cause her to not just live in that fear is to try and help others avoid being in that same situation. When she puts herself into that situation, she discovers this little girl that in a sense is this now daughter to her, in that she lost her real life daughter because of the passage of time, and this new daughter emerges in her life. The thing that she hasn't had, a family, is what she slowly discovers through this story. So there's all these like subtle things that don't need to be overly stated, but add extra layers to her character. It has tension, thrills, scares in it, but it also adds in much more explosive action. Like the first movie, it takes a long time to get going. Like, it is a slow burn to the first action set piece, which is about 50 minutes into the film. And then once you get there, you just feel like the tension winding once again. Like the first movie, it just gets more and more intense as it goes along, building up to this slam bang finale that kind of keeps on going, and you have the big shootout, you have the rescue, you have the final showdown, and just builds and builds and builds until the credits roll. When it comes to like the corporate side of it, it starts to continue to establish the way that the corporation doesn't really think that much about people, and they're taking these reckless risks, putting people in danger, not communicating, continuing to try and exploit these aliens for their profit, despite how many times it keeps going poorly. They keep thinking about that, so it continues to explore all of that. Other piece added into the mix here is you, of course, have the colonial marines, hence why it is this war movie. But at the time, James Cameron was writing this movie, he talked about how he was reading a lot of books on Vietnam.
I was reading a lot of books on Vietnam at the time. Michael Herr's Dispatches being obviously the one that was the most prominent, but there were other ones. There was another one called Going After Cacciato.
And very much tied to that, he wrote Rambo 2, this Vietnam sequel movie, right around the same window of time.
At the same time that he was writing Alien, he was also writing Rambo First Blood Part 2. So he had 2 different desks, and he played different music to get him into the headspace for the 2 different films.
And he kind of puts his actual ideas into this movie, whereas Rambo 2 is very much Stallone's ideas in politics. This is kind of his exploration of these soldiers that are kind of disillusioned. They're just doing what they're instructed.
There are a number of books in that kind of oeuvre of the disgruntled or disillusioned or traumatized soldier. And, so I wanted that flavor.
Is this just another bug hunt? And it's kind of interwoven into it. It's all subtext. It's not stating, it's not being preachy about any of this stuff, about how soldiers have become the pawns of the people in power and don't even believe in what they're doing anymore. It's present, but it never pauses to like knock you over the head with it. It's done through storytelling. It's done through characters. Each of our colonial marines has kind of a different, unique personality, different ways that they dress up their uniforms, different ways that you remember them for their role in the film. A character like Hicks is someone that you like him as a character. He's a strong soldier, but he's not just the generic alpha soldier that wants to step into leadership. He's reluctant. He's not reluctant to step into action, but he's reluctant to step into leadership. He's very willing to trust everything that Ripley is saying because she knows what she's talking about, and she also is willing to step into action, and her motives are pure in everything, whereas some of the other people aren't stepping into leadership, don't know what they're talking about, and clearly have corrupt motives. And so it just kind of makes for a well-rounded character that you root for. And when you pull all these pieces together, where you have Ripley has a mother's love for Newt, it's more horrifying to watch a mother lose a child than to simply watch a person in peril trying to survive. There's a greater desperation in that creates a more urgent ticking clock. And that's so much of what this movie does so well. Once things start to explode, once things go wrong, it keeps stacking problem on top of problem. Of course, there's aliens out there that they don't know how to fight. Also, that thing over there is going to explode because of what we just did. So we have to get out of here really quickly or it's going to go really, really, really bad. Also, that guy over there, Burke, is working against our survival, trying to get us impregnated for the business of the company, not on the same side of us trying to just survive. And then adding to that, Newt gets taken. So there's multiple ticking clocks, creating this sense of urgency, momentum, driving things forward. And then even beyond that, it finds ways to use the sound design to build this intensity. Like when you start moving into the third act that goes on for quite a while, you have them in a room where you can't see any danger, but you hear the movement tracker showing it. And as they get closer, it's quicker and quicker and quicker. And so you have this sense of growing intensity, though you can't see it. There's this juxtaposition in you of like, I don't see it, but I can feel it. And the sound is what makes it get more and more intense.
It's the genius of James Cameron to know that just the beeping, getting more high pitch and high pitch and high pitch will drive you nuts, knowing they're getting closer.
5 meters, man. 4.
So they look up in a ceiling where you're like, what's going to be up in the ceiling?
And it gets to a point that it's supposed to be inside the room and they're not there. And like every best twist, what happens next is what you should have seen happening, that the fact that they were not in front of you didn't mean they were not close to you. They pick over the ceiling and they see all the creatures that are crawling their way to the room.
For this movie, they only had a handful of full xenomorph suits. In the ceiling, you only see a handful of them, but your brain fills in the gaps. And because they've used sound and this little motion tracker to show you so many of them, your brain fills in the gaps. So you think that there's xenomorphs everywhere when you only see 3 of these things in reality. And that's when you have a movie that is so effectively directed, that it's pulling all the different things together. We care about the characters. We want them to survive. And then using the threats that we know, the environment around us, just to create intensity on this whole other level.
Without a doubt, Aliens is the best movie that I've ever been in.
That to me is why this movie is so special. It's so good. It's a fantastic action movie, fantastic sci-fi movie, fantastic sci-fi horror movie. It takes everything I love about Alien and adds these extra layers to it to just take it to this whole other level where I'm more invested, I'm more immersed, I'm more emotionally invested in everything going on. So for me, this is one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. So it comes in at number 1.